Hello, sports fans. It's Friday, December 6th. Welcome to Cleats by Dre. I'm Dre. Let's talk some sports. It's December, folks. First snows on the ground here in New York. And in true December Festivus spirit, we're going to air out some grievances on this episode. One particular grievance. This episode is devoted to those Jets, Jets. I'll have my good friend and Jets fan James on. Yes, I got another friend named James. To just go through what's become another lowly season for a luck-starved football franchise. We'll talk about his origins as a fan, who's to blame for this season, and try to pry some hope for the future. We'll try. But first, lots has happened since last week's Thanksgiving episode. So let's do some quick check-ins on a few of our teams. And we'll have to focus on some positives, right? Let's get some positives out. Some good things are happening with some of these teams before we get to the Jets. We'll do Notre Dame football, the New York Mets, the New York Knicks, and Duke basketball. All right, first up, Notre Dame Fighting Irish. So I glowed last week, right? I spoke glowingly about Jeremiah Love, the incredible, explosive running back. And he did not disappoint. The Irish didn't disappoint. Big game at USC, big rivalry game. It was tied 14-14 at half. And the Notre Dame offense kept pounding the ball, kept moving the ball. And the defense kind of like was letting it up in the passing game. Huge 2 pick sixes at the end. But really, great win for the Irish. But gosh, was I right on Love? And he delivered another hurdle. And that's what this update's all about. That hurdle. The way he effortlessly glides. The guy flies. He flies in the air. It's the third time he's done it now. And he lands, ready to explode some more. I think he's gone overlooked this season. I haven't been checking his health. I know he's banged up in the game. I hope he's able to play in the playoff game. Because I think the rest of the country is about to find out how good this guy is. And I had to think, has there ever been a player like this with those kind of hurdles? And, of course, I thought of Najee Harris, right, of Alabama. And I wanted to see the highlights. I want to see, are they as good as Love's? Are they as balanced and explosive? And the one he did against the Rose Bowl in 2020, against us in the semifinals, it was pretty good. You should go watch it on YouTube. So there's precedent, but Jeremiah Love came through for me after I spoke glowingly on the podcast. And the Irish have some time to wait now. Fans, if you want to get more Irish, go to Peacock, right? Episodes 3 and 4 of Here Come the Irish are on. I'm probably going to check that out. We should have a home playoff game. Incredible. Mark your calendars, December 20th or 21st. Good things ahead for the Irish. Okay, let's move to baseball for a second. I want a quick check-in on baseball, which, by the way, I can't take any more Juan Soto rumors or talk or speculation. It's just too overhyped. People don't have any information, and they're trying to pretend, it's 625, it's 650. I'm not going to speculate. I'll react to news here. Of course, I hope the Mets get him. What's interesting, though, is the Mets did make a signing, Frankie Montas. Yeah, that same Frankie Montas who blew up with the A's came on the scene. The Yankees traded for him, and I don't even know if he pitched for them, with injuries and just a letdown. He went to the Reds last year, sort of disappointing, but then the Brewers traded for him, Stearns' old team, and turned something useful out of him. And Stearns apparently sees enough that they could turn him around. And so the contract's 2 years, $34 million. I think it's a similar move to what Stearns did last year with Minaya, and the next guy I'll talk about, Severino, kind of a reclamation project for a discount. And you got to trust them after the results they had with Severino and Minaya. And what's interesting is just in the last day, we found out Luis Severino found a home in Sacramento. The A's actually gave him the largest contract in their franchise's history, which is crazy to think about. 3 years and $67 million. That's what Severino got. And look, Severino had a really good year for the Mets. Dependable. Had some really good starts. Dependable in the playoffs too. Maybe that was his ceiling, and so I'm not mad at the Mets for not signing him. What's interesting is all these starting pitching deals so far: Snell, Minaya. Who am I missing? Kikuchi, Montas. They're all coming in higher than projections, right? I did that Mets hot stove episode, and I used Fangraphs projections, and everything's coming in higher. So you got to pay. You got to pay if you want starting pitching. But what I was thinking about was, after Montas signed, I was like, man, 2 years, $34 million. Why don't we just run back Severino, Minaya? Like, what's the price of culture, right? We talk about the culture this team had, the chemistry in the clubhouse last year. You don't always get that with these teams. Do you fight to keep that? Do you pay to keep that? What's the price of that? Maybe that's one of my next psychology episodes will do. But you saw the price of it. Severino 3 for 67 versus Montas 2 for 34. That's too expensive for culture. So, good on Stearns, keeping his eye on the prize. He's not afraid to say no. Good luck to Severino. Had a good year for us. Wish him the best. Winter meetings coming up. I think we'll get some big news soon. And we'll react to it. We'll see how close we did to our projections. Right. Okay. Those that have been listening know I blew a call this year. I was big on the Jets. AFC East division winners, Super Bowl winners, both at reasonably long odds. I like them as a high-risk, high-reward pick. If Rodgers was healthy and good, the O-line addition stayed healthy, if their young studs took a leap, lots of high-ceiling potential. But we know the story by now with how this year has gone. A win-loss record at 3-9, playoff hopes long gone, head coach and GM fired. It wasn't fair of me to hype up Jets fans like that. It was meddlesome, not fair of me, and really my New York football team is really the Giants. But nevertheless, as a podcast with the New York base, this Jets team, this Jets season needs some discussion, needs some venting. So I invited my good friend, fellow neighborhood dad, tennis-playing buddy, and lifelong Jets fan James onto the pod to get into it. James, how are you? Welcome to Cleats by Dre.
Doing all right. Thanks for having me.
Did you know you're actually the third James I've had on?
I did not. I guess I need to listen even more.
That's all right. No, you've been loyal. It's just I'm really comparing Jameses to Mikes and doing counts on how many. But we got a third James, Jets James. So let's just before we get into this year, right? Let's just go through your background as a Jets fan. We like to do first, best, and worst. So where and how did your fandom of the Jets begin? Whom do you trace it to? What kind of moment do you trace it to? How far back do you go?
Sure. So I go back. I was a bit of a late start in some ways. I didn't start following the Jets until freshman year.
All right, let's go to college basketball and those Duke Blue Devils. Really good game against the Auburn Tigers Wednesday night. It felt like an old school college basketball game. You could talk about Cooper Flagg, just incredible on both ends of the floor. Auburn had some dudes too. I just want to talk quickly on a stat I heard on the telecast. Malik Brown and deflections. And it's one of those things that you started hearing their tracking stats on deflections. But before the game started, the dude has 71 deflections on the year. In what, Duke plays like 10 games? 7 deflections a game? That sounds crazy. And then the next 10 minutes of game action in the first half, I see it. He has 5. What an incredibly active defender. And look, if anyone knows where I could find stats on deflections in the college game, I'd want to know where Malik Brown ranks. Is he first? Is he first all time? Like per game? Incredible. And yeah, good to see him getting the minutes he's getting. He was a big factor on Broom, who's a National Player of the Year candidate. What an incredible transfer in that was. So Duke got the win there. We're now going into the ACC season, where it's going to be a lot of, I'll be honest, almost like Notre Dame for me, some boring games. The ACC lost 14-2 in the ACC SEC Challenge, 14-2. Well, they got to get rid of those commercials talking about, hey, this is, the most esteemed conference, whatever they say. But the last thing I'll say on Duke, interesting clip on X from Shire, right after the Kansas game, the press conference. John Shire said he hasn't really been calling a lot of plays yet. It's really interesting because we've been on him and saying the offense is choppy, the half-court offense is choppy. His theory, and I'll go with it, John, let the guys figure out how to play together, right? Let them read each other, read the cuts, read the action, because that's best for the team's ceiling long term, right? Because, again, I said last pod, thank God it's November. It's not about winning these games, it's about winning the games in March. And so really coy by Shire. I'm willing to play along. I have confidence in March, in April. He'll help direct. But right now the guys are figuring it out. And, man, they have as high a ceiling still as any team in college basketball. So kudos to Shire. Big home win. I've been knocking him, and maybe I shouldn't be as much. So I'm willing to put my hand up on that. But we're in it. We're going to be in a little the doldrums for the conference season. But we'll keep our eye on Duke. Okay, those that have been listening know I blew a call this year. I was big on the Jets. AFC East division winners, Super Bowl winners, both at reasonably long odds. I like them as a high-risk, high-reward pick. If Rodgers was healthy and good, the O-line addition stayed healthy, if their young studs took a leap, lots of high-ceiling potential. But we know the story by now with how this year has gone. A win-loss record at 3-9, playoff hopes long gone, head coach and GM fired. It wasn't fair of me to hype up Jets fans like that. It was meddlesome, not fair of me, and really my New York football team is really the Giants. But nevertheless, as a podcast with the New York base, this Jets team, this Jets season needs some discussion, needs some venting. So I invited my good friend, fellow neighborhood dad, tennis-playing buddy, and lifelong Jets fan James onto the pod to get into it. James, how are you? Welcome to Cleats by Dre.
Doing all right. Thanks for having me.
Did you know you're actually the third James I've had on?
I did not. I guess I need to listen even more.
That's all right. No, you've been loyal. It's just I'm really comparing Jameses to Mikes and doing counts on how many. But we got a third James, Jets James. So let's just before we get into this year, right? Let's just go through your background as a Jets fan. We like to do first, best, and worst. So where and how did your fandom of the Jets begin? Whom do you trace it to? What kind of moment do you trace it to? How far back do you go?
Sure. So I go back. I was a bit of a late start in some ways. I didn't start following the Jets until freshman year of high school. And I vividly remember earth science class, 8 a.m. at Chaminade, freshman year. And I had three guys around me on all sides who were just talking the Jets. And that was the year, that was the Vinny year, right?
Ooh.
They go to the AFC Championship game. So I start following, catching up on all the scuttle, really get into it, and what a year that was. If only I had known where that would lead me for the rest of my life. I don't know if I would thank those guys, but that was when I first became a Jets fan, right there.
Got it. And what's your best and fondest memory as a Jets fan? Okay, Why am I butting in after I just asked James a question? Technical difficulties. Somehow, the audio is lost from the next 5 minutes of our interview. We're not going to blame it on the fact that James showed up at my house when I was expecting a Zoom session. That's on me. I'm the host. I got to clean up my pre-recording instructions for my guests. Let's blame it on GarageBand because, by the way, I love that James showed up to my house ready to pod. Awesome. A Cleats by Dre first, and we had a great time. Now, to recap what you'll miss, James's best memory as a Jets fan is the 2011 Jets winner of the Patriots in the playoffs, the famous Bart Scott "can't wait" quote. His worst memory is the infamous butt fumble. And the other teams he followed are the Mets and the Islanders. Not a lot of winning for this guy. Though have any of us New Yorkers had any winning lately? Bonus points for James because he married into a Michigan family, which even though we don't like Michigan on this pod, we do like James and his wife quite a bit. So we're happy for them and their recent title and win over Ohio State.
And now we return you to our regular scheduled program, In Progress.
What do you think, if anything, is special about being a Jets fan or unique?
I think what I find somewhere in those terms is the fact that as a Jets fan, people don't even make fun of you anymore. They just, you say, oh yeah, I'm a Jets fan. It's just sort of like, oh, that poor bleep, you know? It's just sympathy and condolences. And I find that unique among all the teams I root for and a lot of fanhoods that I hear.
Mets have a little bit of excitement going on now. We were talking about the Islanders just before.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought up that I went to the Disney on Ice in 1988, was the last banner, last division, last, Stanley Cup. But you hit it on the head with the Jets. Like, I have a bunch of different family members that are Jets fans.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are older. And so it's a long run of tough times.
Yeah, you sit there and you think, well, they got to win sometime in the next several years because teams tend to do that. And then you say, wait, am I just going to be a Cubs fan? Who sat there for how many decades? It can happen.
Dude.
And if there's any team that might, it's some of these teams I root for. So we'll see.
Do you have friends or family that are Jets fans too?
I do have some friends and family who are Jets fans, although it's tough for people to hang in for that much, that many years at a time. So people are waning a little bit.
They get pulled out, and stuff. But I really think I'm thinking of I might have more friends and family that are Jets fans than Giants fans. I don't know if there's a pattern there, but I really feel like of all the fan bases here in New York, that it might be the most starved. I think, and I'm a Knicks fan too, right? And that, there's energy if the Knicks get hot too. But I think if the Jets made the Super Bowl, throwing the fact that the NFL is 2 or 3 times every other sport, that people would be on fire.
Yeah, people
would be fired up.
That one day a week, just having that one day to rally around, people love their football. So yeah,
dude, I would be rooting for the Jets totally. What about your kids? Are they into it at all? Do they watch football? Are they into the Jets or?
My son, who's 8 years old, watches football a lot. He made the smart decision last year. He asked me, Dad, why do you like the Jets? They stink. And I said, I don't know. I just sort of started a long time ago, and he decided that he liked Stephon Diggs and he liked Josh Allen, and so he became a Bills fan.
Oh my God, I forgot.
Blessings to him because he's chosen a smarter path, I think. Not that the Bills have the greatest history,
dude, I'm saying.
I would love to go out and root for Josh Allen every week and have a team like that just week to week. Have a team that's competitive. Have a team that's in their games.
Do you guys watch Jets Bills together? Do you watch those games?
We do. We watch them. Yeah, it's a good time. What can I say at this point?
No, well, I've talked about it. My oldest, Braden, right? He's a big football kick right now, so he wants to watch everything.
Yeah.
I was away. I went to the Notre Dame game last weekend, or 2 weekends ago, and he came back and he showed me he had a Jets football that's sitting on the floor here. So he just went, they went to the store, he got to buy something, he bought a Jets football.
Watch out now.
Look, Giants aren't much. We'll talk about the Jets versus Giants. It really, the first 5 years of his life, I couldn't put on a Giants game. And then they made the playoffs. Like, all right, he was into it. But he's in a big sports kick now. And look, and football's got him. He actually, for Hanukkah, he asked Karen recently for a football helmet.
Mm-hmm.
A helmet.
That's fun.
I think what happened is he was playing two-hand touch in the turkey bowl with one of his cousins. He got nicked in the head, so now he wants a helmet to protect himself, which actually good, smart on him. Had to explain to him it's kind of a different, two-hand touch helmet, but anyway. All right, let's all right. So we got the first part out. Let's get into the team now. This season, where would you say this season has ranked most in terms of most disappointing season of them all for the Jets?
Yeah. Like I said, I can't pretend to be a Jets historian. Only starting in.
Let's go back to Testaverde.
But
Yeah.
I've had a nice run with the Jets, and I got to put it up there. Now, I was not, as we could talk about, I was not big on the Rodgers trade. Didn't like the trade when it happened. Thought it was poor decision. Didn't think it was going to work out. Tears the Achilles, even more so. Some other changes to the team roster-wise to afford him salary. So I thought that they would be if everything went right, 10, maybe 11 win team this year with a downside of 6 or 7 wins. But even so, I mean, just the level of play has been really bad. So I'd put it right there. There's that. You got Vinny tearing his
Oh
Achilles,
my God,
right?
man,
The year
that
after
99,
so
yeah. They still went 8-8.
there. Yeah, right. Ray Lucas.
I liked Ray Lucas.
Yeah. You got some other years right in the playoffs. You got Doug Bryan kicks and all this. So not a lot of good to compare to, but it's up there with the disappointments. It's got it.
And even this year compared to last year, what's more disappointing? Like last year.
Last year I had a little more hope, I thought, because the defense was a little more put together last year.
Yeah, we'll talk about the defense. Right, so I wanted to play a game with you. Were you able to look at a ranking?
Let's do it.
So, ranking from 1 to 5, and I might have you do it from 5 to 1. So, but who are the 5 people most responsible for this season being the failure that it is? And so, if you want to reveal yours, go from least responsible to most responsible to the top 5. So who would be 5th most responsible?
All right.
Which single person?
I'm going to go a different way. I'm going to give you 5 and 1 at the same time.
Okay.
It's going to be Woody Johnson, because any list of why the Jets stink and the way the season has gone has to start and end with Woody Johnson.
So he's 1 and 5.
He's 1 and 5. We're just sticking him on both ends. That's right.
All right. Do you want to do the whole list, or you want to go piece by piece with your analysis? What do you want to do?
Well, we could start there, right?
All right.
So I think Johnson. I mean, you want to talk about meddlesome owners, right, and guys who are. There's on the Jet site, Gangrene Nation, guy who runs that site, John B, has talked about. You can deal with a person who's stupid if they know they're stupid, but when you have a stupid person who thinks they're smart, that's when you get in trouble, and that's Woody Johnson.
That's a good quote. That's a good quote.
He constantly thinks he knows the next right move. You can see him getting involved in personnel decisions, right?
Oh yeah,
we've had
that athletic story
now of not allowing them to offer a contract to Bryce Huff last offseason, right? Insisting that they bench Tony Adams this year. Just not anything that he or any owner really has the concept of to be involved in. And, in 25 years of Woody being there, they've had a top 10 offense once, right?
That was going to be a pop quiz of mine.
It's not like he's got a record to go on where he,
Yeah.
Jerry Jones, the Cowboys have failed a ton, but they've had a lot of good regular season teams. They've drafted a lot of good players.
Oh, yeah.
At least if you want to give him, he understands players a little bit.
Yeah.
Woody Johnson, not my guy. Wish he was out. Wish he was going back to the UK or something. But here we are.
Tangent, by the way. I wonder. I almost thought of doing a panel with a Bears fan too, because I imagine the ownership in Chicago, if you took them as pure owners, is not looked kindly upon. You bring up the ambassadorship. Do you hope he is he in the running for one in the new Trump administration?
It sounds like not. And last time he left, he put his brother in charge and he hired Adam Gase. So who knows if it'd be any better.
Gosh, golly.
Yeah.
We are going to end this podcast with some hope for everyone. So, but Woody 1-5, totally on point. Where do you want to go next?
For this season, I will stick Aaron Rodgers at number 2.
Okay, go on.
I think that between some of the moves they've had to make to last year bring in some players that he liked, whether he, quote, needed them here or not, just taking on that contract, giving up the draft picks for him. Even if they don't keep him after this year, they still have to pay him $50 million or $49 million, right? They got to take that against the future cap. And they made a ton of moves to kick money down the road, right? They had to give up defensive line pieces this year to afford this team they have. And just the play hasn't been there. He's been afraid to throw deep, afraid to go middle of the field, and looks jittery. So I'll put Aaron number 2 there.
I think the thing with Aaron, too, is everything that you had to acquiesce for him. And whether it's bringing Hackett I don't know if Hackett's going to be in your list, but, bringing him as an offensive coordinator, you had to sign Devontae Adams. You had to trade for. You had to sign Lazard. You had Cobb. Cobb was here. Yeah. And God, when he gets injured, I guess they felt like they had to just push it for another year and keep everybody and
they were in it.
We'll talk a little bit more about Rodgers, but yeah, I think he squarely belongs on here. So who else on the list?
Number 3, I think you got to go GM, Joe Douglas, right? I mean, across his tenure here, right, the record ended up somewhere around 32-70 or something. The talent base is definitely higher now than it was when he came in, but free agency, very few good value contracts. DJ Reed, maybe John Simpson, but Laken Tomlinson, CJ Uzama, just contract after contract, and then they kept doubling down, pushing this money down the road. You go in the draft and you look back, and 2022 is great with some of those players they got, Sauce, Garrett, and all them, but other years, a lot of misses, right? Zach miss, big miss, especially right, the pick after them. 49ers traded 3 first-round picks, right, to move up for Trey Lance. You'd have to think the Jets being higher could have had that offer if they wanted it, right? They had relationships with the 49ers. So those are big swings and misses. Put Douglas there. He's the guy who put the roster together. I think it's an overrated roster. And you're kind of seeing the talent that it is.
Plus, did he draft Darnold?
He did not draft
That was not
Darnold.
him?
That was McCagnon.
Got it.
Across, you just think about this team. Darnold was drafted in 2018. They gave up 3 second-round picks, right? They gave up 3 second-round picks to move up for Darnold.
Oh, really?
They
I forgot that.
Essentially, decided to forego multiple firsts to draft Zach instead of trading back. They gave up a second and what they expected to be a first for Rodgers. So you're talking in 7 years they gave up the equivalent of how many first and second round picks for quarterback play that has never even been average. It's just been a bad.
But also, I mean, if you look at Darnold now, it's also how much of it is the environment, how much is the player too. And so as a GM, right, you're and as a head coach, you're supposed to put in the right kind of system around.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did my own list. I had Joe Douglas number 1.
Okay.
Just because I don't know, and maybe I'm being a little overly critical, but I'm the Rodgers acquisition was, high risk, high reward. It seems like it hasn't panned out. I mean, we'll get into more as to how this team, what's been wrong with this team, but he architect, right? He had some control when he put this team together. Woody stripped him the last year, it sounds like. But at the end of the day, it's an architected team that not producing.
Yeah. I put Rodgers under Woody because that's when I see Woody having got involved. You could kind of see a path.
You
the
think
team
Woody
was
Woody
on.
pushed to get Rodgers? Do you think?
I do.
And then he was so quick to bench him for Tyrod
Well,
Taylor
yeah,
after
I mean, but
week 5.
this is who we're dealing with. But yes, otherwise
Yeah.
I would have probably, and I can't argue having Douglas Hyde. Like I said, the record kind of speaks for what it is on after 6 years.
Yeah, for sure. Who are we missing in this top 5?
Last one. I mean, I'll put it on Salah / Ulbrich. Just coaching in general.
Yeah.
It hasn't been good enough. The record is not good. Salah had more double-digit losses than wins. They've led the league or been top few in the league in penalties several years in a row. Undisciplined play, unmotivated play.
Sure.
So we'll put
Yeah,
coaching
sure. It
right
has
there.
to. And especially never figured out the offense and how to administer an offense.
Yeah.
Any honorable mentions?
I could put Hackett in there. I mean,
Yeah.
although Hackett got demoted, but I don't know what anybody... See, I didn't have any expectations for him.
Yeah,
So it's
you
tough
knew what
to
was going to
hate on.
happen.
Yeah.
So I just put some individual players from this year, and I was like, oh, Hassan Reddick. Maybe if he came in healthy and ready to go, but that's another,
That's another Douglas. too.
Douglas thing.
Yeah.
But maybe the defense could use more pass rush. I put Greg Zuerlein. Feels like he missed some kicks this year.
Yes.
Could have swayed a couple games, but it really is interesting. I mean, Woody. If you looked at the Jets, schedule this year, they were 2-3. Everyone hated. I mean, you lose to the Niners, fine. Wins at Tennessee, wins against New England. Everyone hated that loss to Denver, but Denver's a playoff team.
Yeah, good team. Sloppy game.
And it was, Zuerlein, 3 for 4 for field goals.
Yep.
Then he lost to the Vikings, playoff team. And that's when you act solid. And you move the defensive coordinator to the head coaching spot, so you hurt, both positions. Do you think there's any, revisionist history that, if Salah stays, the season's better than what it is right now?
I think it could be better than it has been, but not in a meaningful way. I mean,
Well,
if they had
4-8 or 5-7,
another win here or there,
yeah.
Maybe a couple. They moved the defensive coordinator. This isn't a guy who had prior head coaching experience, right? Where you understand what this person will do. He's never had that experience before. So to take that guy, split his responsibilities, give him these new responsibilities he's never had, I don't know what he was trying to get out of it, but...
What was a quote about stupid and not knowing if you're stupid?
There you go. Well,
That's what it was.
Woody had a quote, and he said, "Thinking is overrated."
I heard
Right?
that.
So
I heard that.
It lines up just
Got
right.
But yeah, because after Salah was let go, I saw the defense is 30th in the league in EPA, expected points added.
Yeah.
You just even if a team's struggling, if you cut off the head of the snake, it's not gonna. Sometimes maybe it bounces back. I don't know if that happens as much in football as much as baseball, but yeah, culture was shot.
Some of that's personnel too, in that the defense was built on pass rush and excellent cornerback play, and at the corner position, Sauce has been a mess this year. Michael Carter's been injured, and the defensive line, it got hollowed out. You had Jermaine Johnson get injured. You had trade Jonathan Franklin Myers. They let Bryce Huff go. Reddick didn't play for several weeks, and he's been a nobody. So, and they lost their D tackles as well to free agency. So they just didn't have the same composition they did in past years.
Yeah, let's talk about the defense, because I'm looking at Pro Football Reference. So this year, the Jets are 15th in points allowed on defense. Additionally, they're third in yards allowed. Is that right? I guess they just have poor field position from the offense. But they're let's go by points. 15th in points. Last year they were 12th in points. Year before they were 4th in points. And I pulled up some other stats too, because I'm trying to figure out what really went wrong. And we'll go through the offensive stats also. But I'm trying to see some of the factors. So I saw 91 missed tackles which is 28th in the league, so like 4th or 5th worst. But that was bad last year too. They were 25th in missed tackles. So, takeaways and interceptions. The Jets only have 2 interceptions this year.
Yeah, both Brandon Eccles, I believe, right? They're backup cornerback, so they're just not generating turnovers.
Yeah,
which is a big thing. They cannot, and it's been a struggle for a few years, but it's really showed itself this year.
I think they were ninth. They were ninth last year in interceptions. They had 17. The Jets, the only team worse than the Jets are the Giants. The Giants have 1 interception, and so my stat is none of the Jets' interceptions were at home.
Okay.
So I have Notre Dame played 1 game at MetLife this year against Navy. They run the triple option.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame had an interception at midlife against a triple option team. So they are winning the interceptions count. But it's crazy, right? The secondary, Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, just don't have a nose for the ball.
Sauce has been, he was a player coming out. The criticisms were that he was very grabby, right? A lot of
PI,
grabbing. And
pass
so
interference.
People were worried that he would get called for that in his first couple of years. He was still doing a lot of that. Wasn't getting called quite as much, but he's just been off in general. I mean, I think they've been running at him more. He's a really soft tackler. And just across the board, if I was going to define their defense, I would say soft, right? You can't be
softer than the last couple of years?
Yes, I would have said generally the last few years, right? They had a few more big guys in the middle.
Yeah.
Just a few more players who, we kind of bring that nasty. And this year, they're soft. They've had an issue for a few years not being able to get off on the field on third downs. So other teams frequently just have these long drives where you feel like you're going to get out of it and you don't due to, again, all those penalties they rack up, right? You think you're getting off the field, there comes the flag, you're going to stay on, give the opponent, another set of downs, but definitely a down year, and I think the lack of pass rush has played a factor.
Yeah, and because I'm trying to figure out we'll talk about the offense and quarterback play, but if the defense stayed at its level, it would be a more competitive season. But the defense, it's almost like the defense took a step back, and the offense maybe didn't even take a step forward.
Yeah.
Right. You have that yards per attempt stat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're very similar to what they were. A few more impressive plays than we've seen in the past, but they still struggle to consistently run the ball. Tyron Smith this year
didn't work out. Yeah.
Didn't work out. Just looked awful out there.
Yeah. That's a high risk, high reward. Yeah.
Yeah, being anytime he was healthy, Pro Bowl player to what he showed this year. They lost. Morgan Moses has been injured over on the right side some now, and it hasn't clicked.
Mike Williams
didn't
really work out.
Yeah,
didn't connect.
Another one.
But what's you share the Aaron Rodgers, Zach Wilson stat? Do you have the yards per attempt?
The yards per attempt, I don't have it to quote directly, but it's essentially the same, right?
I think it was even, let's look it up. Zach Wilson had a higher yards per attempt than Aaron Rodgers, 6.8 to 6.3. Oh, no, yeah, they were about the same. Zach Wilson, 6.34. Aaron Rodgers, 6.27, which is crazy. But I asked you, do you have one word to describe Aaron Rodgers?
I think I'd go with exhausting at this point. I know he has the documentary coming out that you sent me the trailer for, the Enigma. That could be another one. But I'm going exhausting.
Yeah, totally.
Everything around him, It's always drama. It's always drama. And that's the word for me. Yeah,
because that's a little bit of my problem with the approach. And I think me as I'll call myself a fan for a second. Because I want the Jets to do well. I was buying into it too because I was like, oh, this great defense, even decent quarterback play, great team. But it's almost did did the Jets brass see Rodgers play his last year in Green Bay
Right.
in 2022? Because he was not the same Rodgers.
Mm-hmm.
So Rodgers won MVP in 2020 and 2021. But 2022, so his TDs to interception went from 37-4 the previous year to 26-12. Still decent. But yards per attempt were dropping from 9.2 back in 2011 to 7.7 in 2021 to 6.8 in 2022. And his QB rating by ESPN, it dropped from a 74 to a 41. He's actually QBR's 48. So he actually is playing better this year, according to ESPN, than his last year with the Packers. Mm-hmm. 19 TDs, eight interceptions this year. So like, it's almost like they wanted to look past that last year in Green Bay and wanted to blame it on other things like not having good receivers. Even though the next year didn't Jordan Love come in and like actually like play really well with those young receivers?
Yeah.
So. And then you amplify it with the fact you had to wait a whole another year for him to recover. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of like, I guess that's how you take a big swing as a GM like Douglas and Saleh. They put their jobs on the line and their jobs are gone now because it didn't work out. And I almost want to look back and see what were the other QB options back then, right? Was it? I don't know. I almost want to research it. Yeah,
they were not great. So the offseason. Right. The two names that were bandied around a lot for the Jets, which would not inspire a lot of energy, but there was Derek Carr.
Yeah,
right?
Which wouldn't have been great either.
That would not have been. And the only upside there is at least you would have got him, and he would have played at probably a similar level, but you wouldn't have given up the draft picks.
Okay, yeah.
True. I at that point, I thought that they had put together a good young core. They missed on the quarterback, but I would have rather seen them try to pick up a bridge like Jacoby Brissett, who was there earning peanuts, right? He can manage a game. They needed some game managing. That's how they wanted to run their offense anyway, right?
Yeah.
So do that and, then try to find your next guy, but continue to build the team. But they decided to take that other approach and go all in. They decided this was the team, this was the time, and you could hear Woody even earlier this season talking about thinks this is maybe the most talented Jets team that he's ever had. And
that always, when an owner says that, right, that comes with like an asterisk that like, well, if this team doesn't perform, I'm going to fire my head coach after 5 games.
Yeah,
right.
But we've seen that there is more talent than, like I said, when they started the rebuild, but it's not as talented a team as it was chalked up to be.
And I looked it up. So, right, I think the QB moves. So you could have traded for Russell Wilson. Even though he's playing okay now. Could have traded for Deshaun Watson.
Happy to miss that one.
Could have signed Jameis. It was fun, but maybe not the right fit for the team and the defense. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, in hindsight, there weren't exactly great options there. Yeah. It's just, like, exhausting is a great word for it because you don't just get Rodgers. You have to go get you have to bring Hackett, and you have to bring Lazard, and you have to bring his people in. Where, like you said, if they go for a stopgap like Brissett, maybe they could have hired like an innovative offensive mind. They could have hired maybe Ben Johnson in the Lions. But no, it had to be Hackett. And so like you put all your eggs into that basket, and man, maybe this is a lesson for franchises in the future. Like, I feel a lot of people are looking at this, like, and thinking, do you not swing so big at the quarterback spot?
Yeah. It's also a struggle because as soon as you can tell that this isn't going to work out, there's going to be a long lag before you can, feels to me, like you can get back in it.
Yeah.
If you sign the bridge, you leave yourself more room. But as soon as you can see Rodgers isn't working out, between all the dead money they have, just between having to hold on to this guy because of who he is, you just want it to be over. And there's enough Jet seasons you want to be over, but this one feels, it's a little different. We just need to get to the next phase at this point.
I mean, is Rodgers really going to play the next 5 or 6 games?
I don't know.
That's so awkward.
Waiting to see.
And by the way, I love Tyrod Taylor. I wanted the Giants to resign him. You saw if you watch Hard Knocks, like the Giants wanted him back.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy that's never really gotten a great chance. Always is like the second banana. Someone should say, Rodgers, we're not going to pick up your $35 million option next year. Like, see ya.
Yeah.
Give Ty God, right? They call him Ty God for a second a chance. The pop quiz I wanted to give, and you mentioned that there's only been one top 10 offense in the last since Testaverde. Do you know what season that was and what quarterback that was?
I think it was it the Favre year?
Yeah, this is Brett Favre.
Yeah.
And speaking of disappointing seasons, we didn't talk about
That's
that
true.
Jets team.
Starting the way they did,
9-3.
Yes.
And did not make the playoffs, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That, so I mean, maybe that was the path they were. Hey, we got Favre, best offense we had. It didn't come through. So, looking ahead, do you have any picks, either GM or coach, anyone that might be available that you want to see come in and be the next to try it out with the Jets?
I try to be realistic that I'm sure there are many options who could do the job well, and there's a lot of them that I don't know, and a lot of times those hot names you hear end up not being exactly what you're hoping for. I think the Jets could use some stability, right? There's a lot of upheaval. I know there's been mention, I think you were going to ask about, what do I think about Rex Ryan, right? Rex Ryan, to me, more noise, more blaring sirens, more
success, more wins, more feet pictures.
No playoff wins in 13 years out of him. He hasn't coached a team.
And no one really picked him up. Did he even go coach anywhere afterwards?
He coached. He went right to Buffalo and coached.
Oh, he did.
2 or 3 mediocre years there.
He wore out his welcome there, huh?
Yeah. So no,
you're
love Rex for that little.
What
window.
if he brought Geno Smith back?
Would somebody punch him in the locker room again, or what do we do?
Oh my God, that happened on the Jets.
That was on the Jets. Yeah. EK.
Geno's grown up, I think.
Yeah. No, good for Geno for going and doing what he's done. He had a rough go with the Jets, and good for him.
And with the Giants, rough go with the Giants too.
Yes. No, somebody like Vrabel, if you wanted to come.
Yeah.
You've seen he's been a successful coach. I'm a little I've thought back. The Jets, since I started rooting for them, who's the only offensive coach they've had in all that time? Adam Gase. It's the only offensive head coach they've had, despite the fact that the league has constantly tended toward offense. So I think I would prefer having a head coach who's on the offensive side, but Vrabel has also showed, right, his offensive coordinators, Matt LaFleur, gone on to be a good coach, knows how to run offense. Arthur Smith, who's had some good offenses, and then he had Todd Downing, who's with the Jets now. Not quite as good, but he seems to be able to make some decent hires. Somebody like that, or if not, take a shot on one of these offensive guys and see what we can get.
Yeah. What about Belichick?
No.
He would never come here.
Well, he wouldn't come in.
He would never come.
But...
I actually heard he interviewed for the University of North Carolina.
Oh, really?
Job, yeah, I've seen that today. He wants to go to college.
Mac? Okay.
Bill Parcells. Is Parcells still alive? I think he is.
I feel like by asking that, we could probably say a little past.
Dude, he was a great coach.
To...
If Mike McCarthy comes free and that keeps Aaron Rodgers in the Jets, I'm being cruel now.
No, although if they had hired McCarthy instead of Gase, the team might have been a little more stable back then too. They didn't want to give McCarthy power. They wanted to tell him who his coordinators were going to be, if I remember right.
I feel like Bowles got a tough run of it. He was here 4 years.
He did.
But 3 straight, 5-11, 5-11, 4-12. So stability sounds like a good thing to go for. And it's interesting because it segues to my next question of like, who has it worse right now, the Jets or the Giants? I'm curious your take on that. Who do you think has it worse?
I think the Jets do, because I feel like the Giants are a year ahead, maybe, of where the Jets are, right? They're moving on from Danny. They have some of their players are earlier in their contracts. Some of these Jets players, by the time they're good again, if you want to keep Garrett or Sauce, they're going to need the big contracts. Quinnen's going to be past his prime by the time. And again, I think ownership matters a lot. I think it matters to perception of the teams. I think it matters to free agents in terms of the Jets are looked at as a clown show. The Giants are seen as bad, but there's more regard for that franchise.
Yeah, they're weaning. I think they're weaning on the credibility side, the Giants.
Yeah. What do you think?
I would tend to agree with you that the Jets have it worse because the Giants have made their clean break a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
The Jets have a messy break to make. The biggest thing is probably the ownership. John Mara has had troubles figuring out, the head coach and GM situation, because Coughlin and Manning both came in. Eli both came in under Wellington, technically, even though John was involved back then. So he's had a tough track record figuring out. He's a little less meddlesome. He's a lot less meddlesome. I think he says some things, Mara, but he generally lets his guys make decisions. And, man, Woody, the news that came out of Woody with everything he's meddled in is tough.
Yeah.
I will say, I think the Jets have probably more attractive pieces at this point, where if a new GM wanted to come in and start trading guys off, he could get a trove.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. People would still buy into Garrett, Wilson, to Breece Hall, to Sauce. There's guys on the offensive line. There's talent there. The Giants are still several pieces away. But it does have that feel where like the Jets took a big swing this year, and now that the swing missed, it's like, okay, pick up pieces, kind of thing. So where's the hope? Where's the hope for the Jets fan? Paint a rosy picture. I'm going to tell you, in order for the Jets to be in the Super Bowl in 3 years, not win it, but just in it,
mm-hmm.
What do you think has to happen? What's the path?
Yeah, that's a tough 3 years. So I've been saying I don't think they're going to make the playoffs again for another 3 to 4 years.
Win the division in 3 years.
Okay.
What's the path?
Right, the path has to be, I think that you let go of Rodgers, right? They're going to have to make some decisions on defense. On the offensive side, I think you try to keep Garrett. They've got some good building blocks on the line. Finally, right? Olu Fashanu, Joe Tittman, you got some players there. I would try to offload Breece Hall this offseason. Running back, number one, really his stats are all volume, especially as a runner. So I think...
Try to trade him?
I would try to trade him to a team, a lot of people criticize the Giants for not bringing back Saquon. The Eagles are in the perfect spot to need a player like that, right? That guy who's going to put him over the top.
Right.
The Giants.
Who's the next team that needs a running back like
something
that?
Like that.
Trade.
But yeah, I think you hope to find a quarterback. Right. You pick up another. They need another receiver. Right. After this year, Devontae's gone. Lazard will be gone. Right. Pretty hollow room there. They've missed on their third round pick Corley this year. But hold on to your picks instead of trading them away. They traded for Devontae mid-season here, which is just idiotic. But pick up a few more weapons. Hope that you can hit on a young quarterback. And, you see a lot of teams in this league turn around in short windows. Yeah. Just tends not to be this team, but it doesn't mean they can't if they get the right management.
So would you like to see them be more defense-focused or offense-focused, or just wherever there's talent? Because of the defense side, can you bank on Sauce Gardner finding it again, and Quinnen Williams, and can you bank on that, or does the next great Jets team have to be get a quarterback to pair with Garrett Wilson, and now you're talking? Yeah,
I think most teams these days you got to have the solid offense, and the offense seems to be more translatable season to season. There's some teams like the Steelers and Ravens where they have great defenses every year, but they can rotate players through that, and they have systems that stay good. Yeah. Typically, you don't see these defenses built around the same players stay good for extended periods of time, so I'd rather build through the offense.
Ben Johnson?
I'm open to
Lions
it. I
coordinator?
don't know why he would come. He's going to have his pick of jobs, Come for...
I think you said it, though. I think so much of it, look at the Commanders, right? You hit on a quarterback, Jaden Daniels. Could turn the whole franchise around, get people to want to come here. So I want the Giants to be in for a quarterback. Even if people are saying it's a weak quarterback draft, let's have the Jets in at 2. That's going to turn the city around for football. That's what we got to hope for.
Anybody you're targeting?
I think Shadur. I think Shadur is going to come to the Giants.
Right.
Yeah.
That last week.
Yeah, I think they're the type of work. I just see breadcrumbs.
Mm-hmm.
So Cam Ward for the Jets. That would be incredible. If so, Jets and Giants to keep losing. You have to lose, and I don't mean like as a fan. Like I'm not going to sit and watch the game and actively root for the Giants to lose.
Mm-hmm.
I just may not watch the game and passively root for them to lose while checking scores on my phone and checking my fantasy football matchups.
Yes, this last Sunday I watched the first hour of the game. Took the kids to Moana 2.
Oh,
nice little time.
yeah.
Movie
What are the
ended.
reviews? What are the reviews on Moana 2? We're
As you hear, not as good as the first music. Not as good. Still a good movie, but
we love Moana.
yeah. Credits roll. I turn on the game on my phone, see them fail to go down the field yet again, and say, I'm glad I didn't watch the rest of this.
All right, holiday season coming up. Right, Jets, Giants, Moana 2. Maybe that's where we spend our time. Let's do a Moana
Might be the place to
review
be.
pod. All right, James. Thanks for venting with us.
Thanks for having
Was this difficult, or did this help? Was this therapeutic, or did it just go deeper into?
Yeah, it's hitting me a little on both sides of that front, I think.
All right. Well, let's make a date 3 years from now. We have a Jets AFC East division champion pod following your plan.
All right. And you'll have Shadur, and maybe they'll be matching up.
Shadur versus Cam Ward. Let's do it.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Oh, good dap. All right. Thanks for listening, folks. Really appreciate it. If you like these kind of longer form conversations, had one with lifelong Mets fan, episode 25. Got a lifelong Phillies fan. We did a Know Your Enemy, episode 24. And, of course, one of the most popular ones, let's see what episode it was with my dad, right, about tennis. Episode 15 it was. My dad joined to talk tennis in the next era. So let me know if you like those. And anyway, take care. Have a good week. We'll talk to you next week.